Shouldn't take much effort. That's what we like to call free horsepower. Hi guys, welcome back to the JPM Performance channel. Today we are aligning this Miata, this F-Production Miata. Brand new chassis, super straight, new subframes. Actually makes my job a lot easier. When you have a unibody car, it can be very easily twisted and slightly off. You can still align them that way, but this certainly makes it a lot easier. I have finished the corner weighting on the car. The sway bars are disconnected. Corner weights are perfect. I've got the driver weight in the car. I've got simulating how much the driver weighs. Got some ballast over there. One thing we are missing here is the bodywork, which is really not a big deal because it's equal amounts of weight side to side, whether it's the doors, the fenders, nose, bumper. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but it's going to be 99% there. Once the car is completely finished, we'll put it back on the scale pads here and be able to finalize all of that. So you can see that I have the car sitting here on level pads, and I like to do it on the lift. It makes my life a lot easier because I can simply roll the car back and forth, lift it up to make changes, put it back down, reset everything, roll it again. But this is a critical part for aligning and corner weighting. I have a 10-foot level, and I make sure that all four pads are level to each other, level to the earth. And that is very, very critical to setting up a car properly. So these are what they call smart strings. Lots of people use these. I know you've probably heard about laser levels and things of that nature, which is all fine. This is kind of the old school way of doing it, but the cool thing is it's got notches, and once we get this squared up around the car, I'm going to call it a box around the car perfectly, we can then make changes, roll the car up and down, and the strings will stay in position, which makes our life really easy. So first thing we need to do is get the strings set up on both sides, and then we'll get them evened up front and back so we have a perfect box, and then we'll start checking stuff. So let's get after it. So quick tip here, when you're checking your side to side on the front of the car, make sure your steering wheel is perfectly straight. The other thing you want to make sure you do, because we haven't set our toe yet, we can't necessarily be checking front and rear toe yet. So what I do is I go right off of the center of the wheel and basically take an average from the center of the hub from front to back right there. That'll give me my distance here. Do it on the both sides. That'll make it even. The back's easier to do. So that's kind of what we're doing. We'll work back and forth. Okay, so this car is actually spoiling me a little bit because it's so nice and so new. But now that I've got my box perfectly square, I will start checking toe and camber on the rear. Getting those set, we'll check camber in the front. I always do front toe last after we get our camber set, and we'll just kind of go from there. So I'm actually going to kill two birds with one stone here. Now that I've had the carp in the air, we're going to set these turn plates in the front and get our caster even first. Pro tip, make sure you put it in gear so it doesn't roll while you're doing your caster, because you don't want it to roll off of your camber plates. Five and 3/4, which is actually a good number for one of these Miatas. What I like to do normally, and I've already done it, max out your caster adjusters on both sides, and then whichever one has the most, pull that one back slightly to match the one that you can only get so much. So odds are, because this car is so straight, it's probably going to be pretty even with it maxed out, but we'll see. So this one's slightly over 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves a quick little adjustment. We're going to pull the caster back on this corner. We're going to leave that one at 5 and 3/4. We're going to pull this one back to match that 5 and 3/4, which is actually a really good number. I like to see between 5 and 6 on a Miata. It does a couple of things. It helps the car track pretty straightly, which is not that big of a deal. But the other thing that it does is it gives you camber on the loaded tire rolling into a corner. It actually decreases camber on the unloaded tire, which can really help with tire wear. So anybody that's driven a Miata knows they already handle great, but these are just kind of some of the little tricks to make them even better. Very close. It's right at 6. We're going to pull a tick more out of that. While we're here, we might as well make it perfect. Couple quick things to note here that I probably should have said at the beginning. We're going to assume that all the tires are at the same tire pressure, generally what you would be running hot pressures on the track. We're going to assume that you've torqued your wheels, and we're going to assume that all of the suspension is tight. Now, I set initially the front camber so that they were equal. That's also something that's important to do before you do caster, because as you change camber, it can slightly change caster. Not a ton, but enough that I want it to be perfect. So make sure your front camber is very, very close. Then you do caster, then we will finalize our camber. Changing camber will not change caster that much, but changing caster can change camber a little bit. Again, in a Miata, they're not that correlated together, but pretty closely. And maybe I overdo things a little bit. This particular car has spherical bearings in all of the pickup points in the suspension, so there's no rubber anymore. So it's very, very precise, which helps with being able to get very, very back-to-back measurements. So that's how I know I can make a tiny little adjustment and I'm actually seeing the change. So that's very important when you're doing this as well. Five and 3/4 on the nose. Okay, quick note to self. The smartest thing to do here would have been to do a quick front camber adjustment to rough it, then do your caster adjustment, get that set, then finalize the strings. Now you can see I moved the strings. I do now have to move them back. Now they should be in the same location, but now I need to recheck everything. So I was slightly off on the way that I normally do this in order, but not the end of the world. But now we've got our caster set right at 5 3/4, equal side to side, so the car will track nice and straight. Now we'll get everything reset and go back to the rest of the alignment. Okay, so I've gone around and around. Kind of takes time, so you go around and around and around, adjusting and checking. Of course, in the rear of a Miata, when you go to adjust the camber, it changes the toe. When you go to adjust the toe, it changes the camber. So to give you a quick rundown here, you can see where we started out an eighth, in an eighth, worked my way while I was adjusting camber. So camber in the rear was initially at 4.4 and 4.1. Well, that's way too much. So as I was adjusting camber, I was also adjusting toe at the same time. So ended up with 3.5 degrees of negative camber in the back, and this means 0 toe. That's how I like to run a Miata. In the front, I didn't write it down. With these tires, we started at 3.6 and 4.2. Ended up with 3.9 in the front. So this is a Hoosier radial, the 245s. And this is a good starting point. Of course, once there's a bunch of weight on, finalize the body on the car, the front of the car is going to come down slightly, which I did compensate for a little bit. But once that's on, that'll change the alignment just a tiny little bit. Not a big deal, but I've got it perfect right now. And that is with driver weight in the car and some ballast sitting in the passenger area to balance the car out. So very happy with this. And that's kind of what you're looking for. So utilizing the strings and making a good square, you can see now the car rolls very easily. Your car should roll just like this, very easily. Shouldn't take much effort. That's what we like to call free horsepower. It's great to have a good engine. Of course, we have one of those too, but with a proper alignment, proper corner weighting, of course, proper shock setup, and making sure that the back of the car is square with the front of the car and that all the tires are pointed in the same direction, you're not going to scrub. And that is free horsepower. So hope you guys learned something today. As always, like, share, and subscribe. We're going to be doing all sorts of videos, of course, as these projects come up. And feel free to make a comment. Like I always like to say, there's more than one way of doing things. This is how I do it, and we've had a lot of success doing that. So hope you guys are doing well, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.